What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they got some pretty big news yesterday. Some news I don't think many people would ever see coming, but the cameras and HBO are headed to Pittsburgh this season. Meanwhile, the San Francisco 49ers just continue, or at least Brandon Aiyuk continues to drop every nugget and make this as exciting of a roller coaster ride as humanly possible this offseason when it comes to the wide receiver trade market. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they have informed one member of their offensive line that it's seemingly coming to an end and it's time to debate who's the next guy to replace him maybe next season. And then, as always, we will dive into your questions as we do every single day. So make sure that you are dropping those in the chat all podcast long. We appreciate you, Nick. It's a beautiful day here in the Berg. I won't lie to you, man. I'm already smelling the cannolis and the pizza. The coffee a little bit different. You know, I'm speaking with a little bit of an accent these days. How you feel, my friend?
I'm feeling good. Obviously, I don't have a big vacation coming right up, so I don't have vacation brain, but it's completely understandable that you do, because it's not like you're going down the street to just jump in the Mon. You're going over to Italia. So I'm excited for you, man. I'm excited to talk Steelers football as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I've been saying good old Italy because back in my hometown, everybody calls it Italy, and Jillian is she's not a fan. It's Italy. Nah, it's Italy. We're going to
say that's getting old real quick.
Yeah, and I'm definitely gonna drop it when we're out there, and we're gonna see how somebody reacts, and we'll play that one by ear. But until then, it's good old Italy, and I'm very excited to head over. But I'm excited to talk some Steelers football, and I'm glad that we got some pretty big news yesterday, some pretty massive news that, I mean, me and you said before the podcast started, we never thought was going to happen. And that is that the Pittsburgh Steelers have landed a gig with HBO's Hard Knocks. The cameras are coming to the Steel City and the South Side this season. Not only are they a Hard Knocks team, but they're an in-season playoff push Hard Knocks team, which, if you're going to take the two, the training camp getting ready for the season or the in-season, we are making a push through an absolutely terrible time of the schedule and then into the playoffs, I would always expect the Steelers to be pushing for training camp because, well, nobody, and I mean nobody, wants cameras in your face as you're heading towards the postseason, and especially with the Pittsburgh Steelers schedule and everything going on and how just dramatic this team has been when it comes to their playoff pushes the last couple of years. It surprised me. It didn't seem like a move that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to be very happy with. I got some reactions to this. I want to ask yours. What were your thoughts when the news broke that Hard Knocks coming to the Steel City this season?
I was baffled. I never thought that I would see the day that Mike Tomlin and Art Rooney would allow a camera crew from a national outlet to come in and get all access. Pretty much.
All access.
The first time I watched the in-season was last year with Miami, because that's the first time it really intrigued me with a team. But this year, I mean, the entirety of the AFC North, one of the best divisions in football, and also getting an unfiltered look at what's going to be, I mean, maybe not drama in a negative way, but you have Russell Wilson fighting on his back end of his career. What's the quarterback situation looking like at that point? And so many other storylines. I'm excited. I'm not going to have to be the one elbow and HBO camera crews to get into the scrums, but I'm excited to see what happens here.
Yeah, I texted some people yesterday, some buddies of mine that cover other teams who have dealt with Hard Knocks before, and that was my first question. I was like, look, man, I get it, more exposure, there's more cameras. I have two big, massive questions. One, am I going to be on TV? Because I don't want to be on TV. And two, am I going to have to fist fight some camera people to try to get in there and be able to interview Russell Wilson on a weekly basis so things are going to be smooth? And the answer was a little bit of both. Probably got to throw some elbows, but chances are I'll be good. They'll stay out of my way, but it'll be a good time. And from what I hear, it will be much more exposure. The fans will get so much more insight into what is going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think that's massive. The positive side of this, whether the Steelers want it to happen or not, is that the fans get more Pittsburgh Steelers football this season. And that's as cool as it gets. The tough part of that, and again, a good part for Steelers fans, but a bad part for the Steelers team in general, is the cameras show up on December 3rd. The schedule after December 3rd is at home against the Cleveland Browns, on the road in Philadelphia, on the road in Baltimore, at home against the Chiefs, and then at home against the Bengals. That is as difficult of a stretch as they possibly come. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers to have to deal with, I don't know, some sort of distraction, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, is not good. That being said, I don't think Mike Tomlin's going to let this be a distraction. And if we're going to be even more honest, I think there's a very high chance that at some point Mike Tomlin tells one of these cameramen to just get out of his face. Just be like, look, you got to leave, man. This is not, you're not here anymore. You need to get out of here. Yeah, it's interesting, but I think it'll be a good time. I would have, as much as I would have rathered the training camp and the quarterback battle and everything there, I think the end of the season, bring the cameras in, then give people some insight into what has been a very suspenseful stretch for the Pittsburgh Steelers over the last couple of years to earn playoff rights and to get into the postseason. That's what we're looking for. You know, take people inside what goes in those meetings, what goes on inside those meetings, what goes on with Mike Tomlin that makes him so special to get a team who is facing a playoff push, who is facing elimination into the postseason. That's exciting, is to be able to say, I got chills just saying that, to get to watch what Mike Tomlin does that makes him Mike Tomlin, allow fans inside a room where everybody says it all the time. You know, Mike Tomlin keeps this team together. Mike Tomlin's the reason that we have winning seasons. If the schedule is as brutal as everybody thinks it is, and the Steelers are as close to the playoffs as everybody thinks they will be, I think it's awesome that we get a chance to see how Mike Tomlin performs and what he does in those moments to kind of, I don't know, draw out the best in his players. And I think that part of it is very exciting. But again, I think at one point things could get difficult. Go ahead.
I think the timing is also going to be interesting. You mentioned that the first episode premieres on December 3rd. Last year, the first episode revolved around the Week 11 game for Miami. Week 11 for the Steelers is that first AFC North game against Baltimore. It's Patrick Queen against the Baltimore Ravens. So if they follow the same thing, I don't know if it changes this year. But like you mentioned, it comes out on December 3rd, which is, I think, leading into Week 13, not Week 12. If it changes, then it changes. That's still a stretch that is going to be crazy to watch the Steelers go through. But if it follows last year, starting with Steelers Ravens in the first episode would be absolutely insane for a season premiere. So like I mentioned, I mean, it's going to be fun regardless, but that kicking it off that way with Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Steelers, Ravens, Patrick Queen, and everything that he's already said in 2 months since joining the Steelers online, it'd be a very, very interesting way to kick that off.
100%. I'm excited. I'm excited for Hard Knocks. I'm not excited to elbow some cameramen, but I'm excited to get inside the brain of some people in some moments that are really intense, where the Pittsburgh Steelers tend to shine more than most. So very excited for that. There's plenty more to come. We'll get some reactions at training camp from these guys, and I'm very excited for the reactions of Mike Tomlin when somebody says, "Hey, cameras are coming from HBO. How you feel about that one?" Because I don't think it's going to be a good time. The memes have been hilarious. I want to dive into the 49ers, and I know we continue to talk wide receiver, but Michael's got a great question that leads us into our next topic of conversation here. Brandon Aiyuk said on TikTok, they don't want me anymore. Does this open up a trade more? How does he raise the Steelers bar like one more playoff win? So just to dive into a little deeper of what is going on with Brandon Aiyuk and the San Francisco 49ers yesterday, he went on TikTok or posted a TikTok of him on FaceTime with Washington Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels, and he came out saying, "I'm laughing, but I'm crying for real. They said they don't want me back." James Daniels goes, "That's it?" And he said, "I swear." That was the video, sparked all of the reactions from everybody. I got some speculation. I'm not going to lie. We could dive into what it means for the Pittsburgh Steelers and if it does open up or reopen a door for a potential trade, but I don't know if I believe that Brandon Aiyuk is out here really talking with the 49ers and them saying, "I don't want you anymore," because there has been no indication of that up until this point. To be totally honest, Brandon Aiyuk makes me very nervous, and Brandon Aiyuk makes me very nervous if he showed up in Pittsburgh, because Brandon Aiyuk seems to be a lot of drama, man, cause a lot of issues with this social media. And that is not what the Pittsburgh Steelers want, nor is it what the Pittsburgh Steelers can have right now as they try to move past some things that have kind of rendered some downfall in the last couple of seasons. I mean, there's reports coming out that Deontay Johnson got moved because of immaturity. Obviously, the George Pickens stuff that happened all year last year You went out and you got Russell Wilson, who's a true leader, to try and add some veteran leadership. You got rid of your offensive coordinator and brought in an offensive coordinator who is as hard-nosed as they come to try and improve the morale within this group. Brandon Aiyuk, man, I don't know if the 49ers said anything. I don't know when this video was recorded, but I got a hard time believing that he was sitting in a room saying, oh, yeah, we're still negotiating. And the 49ers said, no, we're done. And then he just posted it on social media. It seems like it's more drama than not, kind of a social media negotiation tactic, which is just part of the NFL these days, sadly. And I don't know. I don't know if it opens the door, because quite honestly, I don't believe that this went down the way that Aiyuk says it went down. And I'm skeptical as to whether or not there is trade conversations, or if he's just using this to kind of leverage some more leeway in his side of things, because he wants a deal getting done. Your thoughts?
It was interesting that immediately after this broke, Ian Rappaport's like, he says this, they do want him back. It just might not be at the level that Brandon Aiyuk wants it. And, somebody, Mario just said in the comment section, it's a contract dispute. And sometimes people want to negotiate in different ways. And sometimes maybe Aiyuk's like, maybe this will help, curry favor in my direction in this negotiation, because this has been a long and winding road all off season long. If this is another chapter in this story, but also at the same time, it feels like it's a desperation move, if it indeed is what you're saying. And if that's the case, then it just feels like he's not getting the number he wants. And that scares me a little bit, not just because of what the actual, intent of the video was, but it scares me as to what does he want as far as a number, because that might just be too much for the Steelers to handle.
Yeah, there's no way that the number is where the Steelers want it to be. I mean, we have talked about this endlessly, is that if you are looking for $30 million a season, the Pittsburgh Steelers are not looking to pay you. It's just not happening. And at some point, there was something in play, because Michael Lombardi said that during the NFL draft, there was a deal that was believed to be done, and then it wasn't done. And you have to believe that somewhere in those conversations, the Pittsburgh Steelers believed that they had a number that worked with Brandon Aiyuk and what was going on there. What was that number? How close was it to 26, or how close was it to 32? Because that's a massive difference. That's a whole player. Like, that's that's another wide receiver. That's part of a Justin Fields contract. That's so many things. You have to imagine that it had to be closer to 30 and that they were somewhat comfortable with it, because if Aiyuk's pulling all this and saying, you're going to pay me a boatload of money, I'm not going to take $26 million, I'm going to cause all these issues. The Steelers were not sitting around saying, oh, well, we'll give you 28, and him being like, yep, nope, that sounds great. Because at that point, just sign the 26 in San Francisco and rework some stuff so that you make some more money. I don't know. I got a hard time believing any of this at this point. I think where I stand on the situation is Brandon Aiyuk is just kind of causing some drama and making this a bunch of nonsense. And this kind of seems like the roller coaster. Like, this is the peak, this is the Kyler Murray deleting everything and everybody thinking he's out. This is that. This is where it hits the breaking point and everybody's freaking out. Oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. He's gone. And then next thing you know, he signs a massive deal. That's where I kind of feel like we're getting to is the part of this roller coaster ride where he fools everybody. And I don't know what his objective was. I guess it would work out if he gets a contract, because that would have been his objective. But it just feels like we're at the tipping point of a massive deal is going to come because we think it's over. And I don't know. I don't think the Steelers are as in the running as we may want to think that they are. Everybody wants to say that he's the perfect fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I agree. I think him and George Pickens would be massive. I'm not a big fan of the wide receiver group, and I don't think anybody who is sitting at practice believes that the Pittsburgh Steelers have a wide receiver too. I think they have options, but I don't think that they have one. And I think it's, even if you find one, it's nowhere near Brandon Aiyuk. It's not even close. So I don't know. I have a hard time sitting here believing that it's going to happen, but at the same time, I'm not in those negotiation rooms. I don't know what's going on with Brandon Aiyuk and the Pittsburgh Steelers and the San Francisco 49ers. Do you believe that I might be talking out of my butt here? You think that I'm looking at this the wrong way? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, yeah, he's a fit. Obviously, he's a fit. Anybody with that much talent is a fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers on the field. But even if there wasn't anything drama, whatever, take that out of the conversation, because as we know, Mike Tomlin is the great equalizer in whatever drama there could be in most situations. $30 million, even if it's just 30 and not anything more than that, $30 million eats away at what you can pay a quarterback in the coming years. It eats away at what you can pay TJ whenever his contract is up, what you can pay George Pickens when his contract is up. Eventually, you're going to have to pay a running back, right? You're going to have to keep a running back in town, whether that's a decent sized deal for Najee or whether that's re-signing a Jalen Warren, who's going to make more and more money as time goes on because he's only gotten better. $30 million for a wide receiver is a lot. And at the end of the day, whenever I look at the situation now, we've talked every side of this situation for 3 months, it seems now. The Steelers need a wide receiver 2. Aiyuk's a wide receiver 1. And while the talent is great, that also comes with wide receiver 1 money and what could potentially be a wide receiver 1 trade package, because there's going to be interest from other teams that's going to drive that price up.
Yep. That's the other big part of this is the Steelers aren't giving up a first-round pick, and they're nuts to give up a first-round pick. They're nuts. They're just other options, and they have to find them, obviously. But what if your quarterback situation doesn't work out and you don't have a first-round pick? What are you doing? Where are you sitting here? You're just going, well, we'll find somebody in the second round. That's not going to work out. That's not what you want. Then you're in the Tennessee Titans boat where you're just hoping that you get a Will Levis. The Steelers need a first-round pick. They're not going to give one up. They're not going to give up $30 million. It just doesn't seem to be realistic from where we stand. And I just want to address this because this is Marjo. I appreciate you, but we're always pro player on this podcast. Always been pro player on this podcast. And I hope Brandon Aiyuk gets paid a boatload of money. I'm just speaking. I don't believe it's going to happen in Pittsburgh. I just don't think it's going to happen in Pittsburgh. Everybody wants to keep talking about it. And I heard, I was told, and I will stand by this. I was told months ago, I would have been surprised. Somebody in that building told me I would be surprised if it didn't happen. It didn't happen. They were surprised. That's where we stand. I don't think that it's going to happen. I think that they will land a wide receiver, and at some point we'll dive into some options. But for right now, I don't think it's going to be Brandon Aiyuk, not unless that price tag drops pretty significantly over the next month or two. No chance. All right. Next thing I want to talk about, James Daniels told Mark Kaboly of The Athletic the other day that he is not getting a contract extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've already gone through that, but it seems to be as if the Steelers might be moving on from this guy, ready to move on from this guy after this season, which is nuts, in my opinion. You don't move on from arguably your best offensive lineman at 26 years old. Makes absolutely zero sense. This guy is a starter in the NFL. He's been a starter in the NFL. He's young and a veteran, which is everything you could ask for. And he's meshed with this offensive line. But it clearly indicates something. And while everybody wants to talk about Mason McCormick maybe being that guy, and Omar Khan did bring up Mason McCormick, or did bring up James Daniels' contract when they drafted Mason McCormick. I remember sitting right there. Spencer Anderson might be my pick as the guy that they think could become that next long-term starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A 7th-round pick. By the time he starts, he's got 1 year left on his deal, which means he's going to sign a very low-end contract on his next contract. It's going to be very, very minimal, which is a very positive move financially for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's got a ton of potential, and I've heard some rumbles. Some people say, hey, dude, this guy could have a Matt Filer path to being a long-term starter in the NFL, which is not a bad move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Spencer Anderson has looked impressive at times. He looked impressive last season. There was no question he was going to make the 53-man roster, which is very good for a 7th-round pick. I'm a big Spencer Anderson guy. I think he's got a better shot than Mason McCormick. I still think you're nuts to get rid of James Daniels. But do you think that a 7th-round pick, a guy I know you haven't gotten to watch, you think he's got a shot at doing this? And would you pick him over a 4th-round rookie next year when the Steelers do move on from James Daniels, if that's the case?
See, the thing is, when you talk about that, and you talked about it in training camp, you were like, man, they really like Spencer Anderson. I was like, yeah, okay, 7th-round pick. They like him. That's great. They like a project. Well, by year 3, you have a chance to see if that project's working out. And they liked him in year 1. They're liking him in year 2. He might not be ready now, but maybe that's exactly what they're hoping for. They're hoping that he learns behind a guy in James Daniels who's been very consistent for the Steelers the last couple of seasons. Now, again, I agree with you. I don't think they should be moving on from James Daniels, especially when you don't have to pay much of your offensive line, if at all, going forward with 3 guys on rookie contracts. But at the end of the day, I don't know much about Spencer Anderson, but if the Steelers are in a point where they've liked him last year, they liked him this year, and he's continuing to grow, sometimes you just got to trust what they're able to do. Like I said, I'd keep Daniels, but man, they're continuing to push Anderson. And eventually, if there's that much smoke, there has to be fire behind what this kid can do.
That's what I'm saying. At some point, it just becomes real. And I think it's there. I think the tangible part of this is real. Like Spencer Anderson was the dude who came out of Maryland. So you're not going to get a bunch of recognition coming into the NFL draft. But he was a guy who played all positions, who started a ton of football before he ended up in the NFL, who has great versatility, who's a massive human being, and at the same time gets to develop from guys that are pretty impressive in James Daniels and Isaac Seumalo, with Pat Meyer being their offensive line coach. I think that helps tremendously. I look at Spencer Anderson as a guy that, just like you said, in 3 years, you're less of a project. You might not even be a project anymore. And Mason McCormick is still a project in the making. And maybe Mason McCormick is the guy after Spencer Anderson. Maybe they like that, but I got more of a sense that Spencer Anderson is where they see the future of right guard than Mason McCormick right now. I'm not saying long term. I'm just saying right now how they see that. I still think it's nuts that you're getting rid of James Daniels or having the thoughts of getting rid of James Daniels. He's 26 years old, and yeah, you're going to have to pay him a boatload of money, but if he's good, man, if you don't have a sure thing behind him, it doesn't make much sense if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, because you just got through our offensive line is garbage and it's holding this team back. Why are you trying to do it again? Why are you trying to go back to where you were? That's a shocker for me. And at the same time, if Nate Herbig's gone next year, you're going to have to draft somebody else that could hopefully be a swing guard and a center, because McCormick is good, but you need two of them, obviously. I don't know. I got a hard time believing that this makes much sense, but it seems to be in the Pittsburgh Steelers plan. And sometimes these plans work out. Spencer Anderson's a dude that I think will surprise a lot of people at training camp and get a lot of reps because he's just young and that's where he goes. And at the same time, if we're going to be honest, Nate Herbig is also going to be very affordable next offseason. And I don't see him as part of the plan, but he's also 25 years old. And if they believe he could be a starter, why not re-sign him to a 2-year deal and put him in the competition as well? Because that makes more sense if you're looking for options and you don't want to pay somebody a lot of money. I mean, you're going to re-sign Nate Herbig for $2 million a season, maybe max. And that's not a lot of money. I think that they'll be all right. I don't know. I'm stunned by the situation. I think Spencer Anderson's my guy as a pick to replace James Daniels long-term. And from there, you'll kind of see. But I like Spencer Anderson. I think that's a name people got to start paying attention to. When we get to training camp, you'll see more of them. There's not much you could say. Like, it's tough when you sit here and talk about an offensive lineman and try to detail how good they are without just saying he's good. He's very athletic, especially for his size, and he's very good. He's like 3 times the size of Russell Wilson, which might be an issue. But besides that, I think he's got everything you're looking for when you're looking for an offensive lineman.
Yeah, and the other, impact of this is what happens this season, right? Does Spencer Anderson get some play? Yeah. How does he look? How does he progress throughout the season? Because all this is doing as of right now is saying, all right, we're going to make a decision on James Daniels after the season, after we see how does Nate Herbig do in the opportunities he's given? How does Spencer Anderson do in the opportunities he's given? So as of right now, all this tells me is that they're not sold on making James Daniels the guy. They want to see how this year plays out before making that statement and handing out that money.
Yes. I agree. I think it's a wait and see thing. If James Daniels honestly is sitting around thinking, hey, I'll take a cheap deal, I think it just works out way too well. But if I'm James Daniels, go get that money, boy. You're 26 years old. You're a proven starter in this NFL. Go get the money. Don't be sitting here looking for a hometown discount. That never works ever. All right. That's all I got to talk about today. Let's dive into some questions. If you guys have more of them, please toss them in the chat. We'll make sure to go through all of them before we head out of here, but excited to talk whatever you guys want to talk about and answer as much as we possibly can.
Yes, Me is going to lead off today's show. He says, do you think the Steelers will be a part of every episode of Hard Knocks this fall?
Man, I hope so. I hope they're most of them. Because why not? I get it. The AFC North is electric, but I have my hand in the pile when it comes to kind of covering a couple of AFC North teams, and I help out as much as I can, along with other guys helping me out as much as we can. That, you know, as much as other AFC North teams are rivals when it comes to playing, reporters are all kind of buddies, and the other teams are kind of boring. Like Cincinnati Bengals, boring, way too positive. You know, everything's just like happy go lucky over there, and that's not good television. You know, the Pittsburgh Steelers are intense. They are, and I'm not saying dramatic. I'm not saying sad. I'm not saying whatever. I'm just saying they're an intense football team, man. Mike Tomlin is the most intense human being I've ever met. You can always get stuff out of this guy. Nobody wants to watch Zach Taylor on television. Nobody even remembers Kevin Stefanski exists most of the season. You know, John Harbaugh. Yeah, I get that one. Lamar Jackson, cool. The Deshaun Watson drama, that is definitely going to unfold, because it's just when you fully guarantee a quarterback and he doesn't work out, that's what's going to be talked about. I get all that stuff. Nobody's more exciting. Nobody brings better television. Nobody is going to be more fun and have more eyes on them than Pittsburgh Steelers episodes. So I hope so. I have no idea. I'll probably have more answers for you as we get closer to it, because I'm sure I'll get my hands and have some conversations with some guys from HBO and try to get some details of what to expect. But for right now, I'm just going to say I hope. I definitely hope so.
Let's move over and answer Joe's question. He says, was there any movement on the Broncos and Courtland Sutton? I believe Sutton has handled his dispute maturely and would benefit from that rather than being in Denver.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Courtland Sutton is the best answer for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's handled this with all class. Not saying that, again, I want everybody to get paid as much money as humanly possible. You only play this sport for X amount of years. It's not a lifetime, and you deal with a lot afterwards. Go make that money, man. I got no issues with that. Courtland Sutton deserves a bag. He's going to get a cheaper one, $15-16 million a year. Makes way too much sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Denver Broncos, from what I hear, don't want to get rid of him, which is nuts to me. You got way too many wide receivers over there. You already moved on from Jerry Jeudy. This is a Sean Payton offense. I get it. When you catch 10 touchdowns last season, it's hard to look at it and say, we're going to get rid of this guy. But I think it's in the best interest of everybody to move on from him. And I think the closer we get to the season, the more the Denver Broncos will be open to moving on from him.
Black and Yellow Texas Steel says, is Kyle Allen surprising anybody, the third string quarterback?
I told you, what did I say? Maybe it was last week. I said, I look at the same time as I think there's a better shot that the headline that comes first between Justin Fields surpassing Russell Wilson is Kyle Allen looks like the best quarterback in Pittsburgh, because he looks consistent. He looks good. He looks like a veteran. Is he a starter? Is he better than Russ and Justin? No chance. Zero chance whatsoever. His NFL resume kind of details that. But he looks good. He looks consistent. He looks like a proven backup veteran, which is really good for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A guy who could step in if you need him to and maybe add a little bit of a spark if your team gets to that dire point in the season. I wouldn't say surprising anyone, because I didn't think he was going to stink, but he has looked pretty good.
Let's talk about Luke Nessie's question. Says, are we out on guys like Hunter Renfrow and Michael Thomas at the wide receiver position?
I don't know. I haven't heard much noise of either of those guys. Hunter Renfrow, I haven't heard any noise at all. Michael Thomas, I've heard a little bit of noise, but that kind of faded as well. I think the Steelers are just kind of doing their homework on everybody. They're just looking at everybody they possibly can and seeing who their options are and what ones are realistic. They don't all make sense. I don't know if either one of these guys makes sense at this point, but the Steelers are going to at least check on Michael Thomas, or they have checked on Michael Thomas. Hunter Renfrow, I haven't heard anything. They'd have to go, when it comes to Michael Thomas, they'd have to bring him in. He would have to go through all the medicals. He would have to really negotiate. He'd have to definitely take a discounted price. But I wouldn't rule him out as a possibility at this point if nothing else unfolds over the next couple of weeks.
Chris made a contribution and asked, Noah, I'm less concerned with the hole at wide receiver than I am with the dire need for a run-stopping nose tackle. The AFC North run games are going to be tough for the Steelers this year.
Chris, I appreciate you. And I think Keanu Benton solves a lot of that, but I also think Isaiah Loudermilk's development and Dean Lowry's addition add so much to that. Last year, you got to remember, Keanu Benton did not start half of the season. He's going to start the entire season and play most of the snaps this year for the Steelers, which is going to be massive. I get it. He's more of a pass rusher than he is a run stuffer, but he is he's just very good. Like, I think all around he could just be that guy in the middle that clogs the hole and makes some noise. He's not as big as I'd like him to be, but I still think he's going to be very good and dynamic in that middle for them. Dean Lowry's addition is going to be really, really big because there is no drop off after a guy like Larry Ogunjobi goes to the sideline. And then I think Isaiah Loudermilk's going to take another step forward this year because you saw it at the end of last year that he was starting to kind of find his stride. I think part of that was the Pittsburgh Steelers stopped using him as a pass rusher and simply put him in there for rushing downs, and it works out very well. And I think you'll have a better defensive line because of that, and the strengths of these guys will be utilized more.
Lifted Ones has a interesting hypothetical here. Says, will Mason Rudolph become a villain if he somehow beats the Steelers in the playoffs this year?
I mean, yeah, definitely. Which would be wild. If the Titans make the playoffs, that is, I mean, good for the Titans, good for Mason Rudolph, I guess. From what I hear right now, Will Levis looks pretty good. So there's not really a ton of, you're not sitting around thinking that Mason Rudolph's going to get much of an opportunity. In fact, Brian Callahan, the Titans head coach, has said a number of times, like, there's a real competition for the quarterback number 2. I'm like, Mason Rudolph's going to get screwed again. This is ridiculous. Will he be a villain? Yeah, probably if he beats the Steelers. I don't think he could beat the Steelers, though.
Black and Yellow Texas Steel says, which player, just in general, makes the biggest leap in your opinion in 2024?
Year 1 to year 2, I think Keanu Benton's the easy answer. Definitely. I think Keanu Benton's going to be an absolute monster for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. Another option would definitely be Broderick Jones is definitely number 2, 1B, I would say. Those two, I see very, very big things coming for both of them in their sophomore seasons. Broderick Jones could be the reason that this offensive line is as good as they could be, and Keanu Benton could be the future. Like, you could see that this year where Keanu Benton is Pro Bowler in the conversation as the next big name defensive tackle in the NFL. I think both of them have that upside.
Now, outside of year 1 to year 2, do you think there's anybody else on this team that's just going to take a big leap from where they had been previously?
Yeah, I think Calvin Austin's up there. I think Calvin Austin has a very good opportunity to do some things. Jaylen Warren, I think could be looked at as one of the best running backs in football by the end of the season. I really, truly believe that. Oh, who else? I don't know. I think you're going to get a lot of guys. Nick Herbig. Oh, Nick Herbig, easy. Definitely Nick Herbig. But I think there's going to be a lot of guys. Deshaun Elliott isn't a guy that's been incredibly impressive in the NFL, but I think he's going to have a really good year. And Minka's definitely come back as a player. Like, on the Steelers, a safety would never win comeback player of the year. On the Steelers, Minka could be comeback player of the year for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I like that one, especially if he gets back to quote unquote Minka ball.
Good old Minka ball.
Personally, I'm bullish on Pat Fryermuth, but everybody that listens to this show already knows that, so I won't go into any more detail on that one. Interesting question here. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that could be a good one.
Interesting question here from Omar's Burner. Any chatter about Dino Tomlin going to the Steelers?
No. Dino Tomlin does show up sometimes and hangs out at practice. He looks cool, but I think he's pursuing. That's not Dino. That's the other one. The other one's pursuing a rap career. Dino, no, I would say no. I don't think Mike Tomlin wants his son here, to be honest. It maybe as a coach to help in that way, but I don't think he wants his son because I don't think he wants to cut his son at some point, and that's probably what's going to happen. But no, the answer is no. Good question, though.
Ty has a question here. Says, what do you think the starting offensive line is going to be as we sit here today?
My guess is a good question as well. My guess would be we'll start left to right. Week 1, as of right now, we're going right now. A lot can change in training camp. We're going what we saw through OTAs and minicamp. I don't feel good about this, but this is my projection. Dan Moore, Isaac Seumalo, Zach Frazier, James Daniels, Broderick Jones. That's my guess. I think Troy could make his way in there as a right tackle and Broderick could bounce to the left side, but Troy's the biggest factor here. Troy did not look like a starting our right tackle during minicamp and OTAs. And that could change once the pads come on. I'm certain that they will. And I'm certain that eventually he'll be better than Dan Moore Jr. But just from what we've seen right now, there's some development there. He's got to take a step forward. Seemed a little bit rattled, like the game was moving faster than he'd like. It'll all slow down. It happens to every single person. But if I had to guess right now from what I've seen, that's my starting five.
Let's close it out with this one. Where do you see Trice standing on the jump? So obviously he's coming back from that injury. Obviously there's still a lot to be determined once he gets into actual physical play with the pads. But if he's good to go, where do you think he stands in the Steelers secondary?
I think right now he's cornerback 4, pushing for cornerback 3 in the Steelers secondary, where we stand currently. If I had to guess who makes the roster at cornerback this season, it is obviously Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson, followed by Darius Rush, who I believe will be the cornerback 3, Corey Trice, Cam Sutton, who will be the nickel or the slot, and then Beanie Bishop would be my guess. Anthony Averett's got an opportunity. I don't know if he'll make it. He's still got to show me a little bit more than what he has, and you're not going to waste a roster spot on a veteran who isn't showing you that much to save a guy or to cut a guy like Corey Trice or Beanie Bishop. I would say that would be my expected depth chart, and Darius Rush would be the number 3. Corey Trice would be the number 4, but he's just getting into team stuff. So we're going to have to see more of that in training camp. And if he could be where he was when he got hurt last year, I think he's their cornerback 3 with a bunch of upside. He's just got to get there. And that's, you're kind of taking a flyer on a guy who hasn't shown anything because he hasn't had the ability to show anything. That'll come in training camp when we get to Latrobe. But for right now, Darius Rush looks good, and he's probably my CB3.
That's a wrap for today's questions then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Remember that tomorrow we will have a pre-recorded episode, and then we will be off for the next week and a half. We'll drop some clips and plenty of player videos over the next week or so, but we will be back July 1st as I head to Italy and Nick takes some time to sit on the couch and hang out with his cats and whatever he's going to do.
Play some golf. Yeah,
definitely play some golf. With that said, thank you guys so much. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as we've been saying, please go check out all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.